Audience, we are here with our new guest, Bernhard Kerres, today. He is a sought after executive coach and keynote speaker based in Vienna, Austria. He was the first opera singer to become a C-level executive of multi-million euro tech companies. And he was the only artistic director of a world-leading concert house to bring his startup to Silicon Valley. Bernhard started his career as an opera singer and had the opportunity to perform with stars such as Agnes Balsa and Jose Carreras. After his MBA at London Business School, he went into strategy consulting for high-tech and telecom companies. With Booz& Co., Capsch-Career.com, the Austrian telecom system integrator, hired him as CFO before he became CEO of the stock market-listed MTech AG in Germany. In 2006, he was appointed artistic director and CEO of the Vienna Concert House, which he led into its 100th season. He left the Vienna Concert House to create the classical music startup Hello Stage. Bernard is an executive coach working with business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, scientists, and musicians. His focus is on leadership, purpose, and high performance teams. He often uses music as a tool in his corporate coaching. Recently, he also launched a personal development app, Revibrations. Am I correct? Welcome, Bernard. Nice to have you here. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for doing this wonderful tea series, which a delight.
It's kind of very sunny day here in London. How about you in Vienna?
It's very, very hot, very stuffy, and I just came back from a week in the mountains on 2,000 meters up, where it was wonderful fresh air and very cold, so I still need to get acclimated to the heat here. Yeah,
Yeah. I bet it was wonderful with the view and
it
everything
was.
and breathing in the mountains. Okay, I'm gonna start with my first question here
Yes.
for our audience. Can you share your journey from being an opera singer to becoming a C-level executive in multi-million euro tech companies? How did your background in music influence your approach to leadership and coaching?
Well, that's a lot of questions, and it's actually might be a bit boring, but you already pointed out a bit of my journey. In the end, it was a lot of luck and also a lot of mishaps and a lot of situations which just happened being in the right place at the right moment. And when I stopped singing, I knew, and I stopped singing simply because I wasn't good enough. Yeah, could have at best made a mediocre career, and I wasn't interested in that. And there were a couple of other lifestyle issues which I thought are not that good for me. So I tried to transition my career, and London Business School was really instrumental to that. And getting into London Business School was tough, but I can remember convincing the professor who interviewed me and saying, also classical music actually needs professional management. And he bought it, luckily. But finding a job after or during the MBA was really tough because none of the companies would invite me. So what I did is I sneaked into all these great cocktail parties whenever the Career Management Center allowed me, and were trying to mingle with people. And so I actually landed my first job with Booz Allen Hamilton for a summer assignment. I think I spoke for 2 hours with the recruiter about opera. And she loved opera, and certainly I loved opera, so we had lots to talk. And in the end, I said, I would actually love to interview for you. And she said, okay, let's see. And I think they just took me because they thought, having an opera singer is a good marketing thing for 2 months. And out of the 2 months became 5 years, which we're really happy. But most importantly, that brought me back in the end to coaching is I love working with people. I love the trust in accompanying people on their journey. And that's something which absolutely fascinates me, that fascinated me through my business career, through my cultural career. But now it's kind of, for me, I find it an immense privilege, yeah, to get that trust from people and work with people.
Yeah, yeah. You know what you talk about how you get into these companies after your opera career. It's like it reminds me like if somebody wants something, they find the way that they can take them to the path that leads them to that career, the goal, whatever it is that they wanted. So it's a good start. I love that.
Yeah, I think also in sometimes also for clients is to give back some belief in the universe, the greater good, whatever it is. Yeah, to say things will happen. Yeah, it's not just you working all the time and things not working out right now in the moment. Yeah, give it some time, give it some space, and things will develop. Yeah, there is a timeline, and especially people like me who are very much into system thinking, yeah, know that small things change at some end and have a huge impact, yeah, on you, your career, your life, and so on. And that's actually fascinating. And if you take a musical analogy, yeah, having a percussionist coming in the wrong time has a huge impact on the whole orchestra, and everybody hears it. Yeah, also when they come in at the right time, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, small things can have huge impact, and you're sometimes not prepared for it, and you just need to give it that space to say, "Let's see, it will work out."
Yes, yes. And coming from a different background like opera to the tech industry and coaching, how do you integrate your experiences from these diverse fields into your coaching practice, especially when working with executives and entrepreneurs?
It's not actually as different. And I just spoke today to a group of an executive management team, a C-level management team of one of my clients whom I coach. And we spoke about teamwork and what makes actually teamwork. We used John Katzenbach, whom I like very much. And then I explained a lot of things actually based on a string quartet. The string quartet is an amazing example of actually a team. And we did a wonderful work a couple of months ago, actually almost a year ago, where I invited four musicians who did not know about each other to come to Germany and perform. Now, they were all nervous, and especially one of them, Matthias, always wanted to know who are the others. And I said, I won't tell you. You will see when you arrive in Germany, that's it. And some knew themselves, some didn't know the others. And they did what any professional would do, be it a consultant, an entrepreneur, a manager or so, is they came, they opened the instruments, they tuned the instruments, and started working very professionally. Yeah? But the question, especially when you do team coaching, is not if you have that professionalism, because most of people have it. The real question is how do you get from that professionalism to something which is absolutely magic, yeah? Which has this kind of goosebumps on people's skins, where people remember that it is. And that's where we as coaches actually come in to accompany teams in creating that magic. And that is a fascinating work. And we did that with that string quartet to show actually to executives what you can do with the things we do as coaches. And they could hear the difference from the first concert to the second concert. Yeah, but the first concert was really good and everybody was saying, wow, it was fantastic. Yeah? But on the second concert, they all had goosebumps and that made all the change.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, the professionalism brings its good tools with it. So your job is making they are making your job is also easier, right?
Yeah, but I think it's one of the coaching principles, yeah, that we see eye to eye, yeah, with our clients, and we accompany them, and therefore they are professionals. They're amazing professionals, and that's I think so fantastic. What we bring in is sometimes a different perspective, or we open up a thinking space or so, yeah, and that helps them to reach that different performance level.
Yeah, since the music is your core career, core subject, all of you do, I would like to talk about it more with my next question. You developed this concept of performing leadership using classical music as a model for corporate leadership. Could you elaborate on how you draw parallels between classical music and leadership principles? What are some key takeaways that leaders can learn from the world of music?
So it always astonished me that you bring in a conductor to an orchestra, and what many people don't know is that as a conductor you normally have 4 rehearsals, yeah, before you have to deliver an excellent performance. Now I looked at that and thought, that might be interesting. How can they achieve a great performance in such a short period? And as a CEO, as an executive, as a manager, you can learn from that. And there are even more constraints on that. These 4 rehearsals are very strictly regulated. Musicians, orchestra musicians especially, are among the most strongly unionized jobs in the world. So if there's a rehearsal for 3 hours, if the 3 hours are up, yeah, they pack their stuff and go. As a conductor, you can do whatever you want and say, please, we want to do this. They ignore you. They leave. Yeah. So you have to be extremely focused as a conductor to know what you want to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And I developed a whole leadership program out of that called PR2 to actually see that at the beginning the preparation is so important, yeah? And then it is the rehearsal where you actually listen so much to the orchestra and what the orchestra gives to you and what inspires you. But you also at some point need to perform, which means things go wrong in a performance, you need to be able actually to then exactly at the right moment jump in and help and support the orchestra. And the last one is reflection, because, and that's one of the issues I think many executives face, their reflection time and their honest feedback they get is really limited. Because everybody says, you're great, or they kick you out. Yeah? The in-between, the kind of where do you develop, how do you develop, is often tough. And I think, again, a role for us as coaches, which is a great role to give that honest reflection, to work on that honest reflection with executives. There's one other point which I find fascinating in seeing conductors, and that's the difference between young conductors and more established conductors. Young conductors, when they start a rehearsal, yeah, they say da-da-da-dam, ba-da-da-dam, yeah, and they hear something and say, stop, we need to do that again, and they start again, da-da-dam, da-da. This is wrong, we need to do that slower, da-da-da-dam, da-da-da, yeah. After 5 minutes, they have frustrated the whole orchestra. The motivation is all in the cellar. Yeah. The experienced conductors play through a whole movement, 20 minutes. They hear all the things they're not happy with and so on, they would like to have differently, but they register them, but they go on.
They note them, but probably.
They don't even write them down, they need to have that in the memory.
Yeah.
So they have to have repeat. So after 20 minutes, they heard probably 15 things which didn't work out. Mm-hmm. So what they do is they know the 3 things which impact the 15 things to actually make a difference.
Wow.
And that's, again, if you think about coaching, it is one of the roles to challenge executives and managers and entrepreneurs, saying, don't focus on that detail and that detail and that detail. Focus on where you have a leverage. Yeah? Look at the system. Get out of the system. Look at it. Yeah? Don't be part of it. What do you see?
Yeah, it is very good aspect. I love that. I also love classical music in a way that I watch from the movies. I'm not very brought up with a classical music type of music because Turkish music is totally different the Western music. Even the instruments are different. But I watched this series called Mozart in the Jungle. I don't know.
Yes.
I loved it. I love the guy. He was great with all the things. And they were showing this old one and the young one also. When you talk about old ones, experienced ones, and the new ones, that reminded me of. Also, recently, have you heard Emma Cox's brilliant Voila singing with Andre Rieu's orchestra? Oh my God, that just brought goosebumps. Even though I understand not no words. It was awesome, really.
But you have some amazing Turkish musicians and composers. One of the greatest ones for me is Fazıl Say, who is an amazing pianist, and who bridges this amazing music from the more Turkish background and ethnic music and Western music. And some of his music is for me the greatest music which has ever been written. And I think his bridging there is fascinating work he does.
Yes, yes, he does. Absolutely. Thank you so much for mentioning his name. Oh, so my next question. Your work includes coaching not only executives and entrepreneurs, but also classical musicians, as you mentioned in the beginning. How do you tailor your coaching approach to address the unique challenges and goals of these different groups? Are there any common principles that apply across these diverse domains?
I think they're not as diverse, actually. They are, first of all, humans, all of them. Yeah? And they come to me as a coach because they want to develop and move something and move in that direction, and they're looking for somebody who accompanies them. So I don't make a differentiation at all if my client happens to be a musician or a CEO of a big company. And they are my client, and we enter a partnership when we enter the room, and we work together. Yeah, and also the challenges are actually not that different. Yeah, because very often it's about self-confidence, about how do I get out there, how do I deal with setbacks, how do I deal with, actually one of the interesting questions we discussed lately was how do I deal with becoming too successful. Yeah. So that's questions which a CEO, top manager, an executive manager, an entrepreneur has as much as a pianist. Yeah. So that's it. Looks at when you look at it, it looks completely different, but it isn't. It's human beings who want to develop, who want to move forward in their respective field, and they deal with exactly the same challenges.
Yes, as you said, because we are not musicians, it looks totally different to us. But as a musician yourself, you see there is no difference. I am a normal human. So you know the needs of these musicians as a normal person, right? So it is much more easier for you maybe to uh, communicate with musicians than us, probably. I think.
I think it's one of the assets. Definitely is I've been there and done that. Yeah, so that doesn't mean that I know better. Yeah, especially a coach. Probably it means actually I definitely do not know better. Yeah, but I understand their reference system and I understand the language they talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been to Silicon Valley with my startup. Yeah. I know how Silicon Valley ticks. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that I know better, but it means that I understand the reference system and the language an entrepreneur speaks, a musician speaks, or so.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about your book a little bit. You have a book called Be Your Own Manager, provides career
Yes.
advice for classical musicians. Could you share some
Yes.
insights from this book that could be valuable for individuals in also other industries as well? How do these principles of self-management and entrepreneurship translate beyond the world of classical music? So much classical music.
I mean, I wrote that book out of frustration in 2015 because, 2016, because so many musicians just don't make enough money and they have never learned business principles. So I wrote that book together with my dear colleague Bettina Mene, and it's also available in Japanese,
Oh.
interesting enough. But the principle, there are some principles who are actually good for anybody who sets up on their own as a single proprietor, single entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur or so. Because one of the key principles at the beginning is the so-called love mark, and that's the concept I stole from Kevin Roberts, who was the CEO of Saatchi and Saatchi. And Kevin created a love mark which has to do with branding, but it's highly emotional. Yeah? And he says, we can't actually differentiate ourselves anymore because we are better. Yeah? And musicians are a brilliant example, as are coaches, as are consultants. Yeah? If you are a really good coach, if you did all your credentials, all your training, you know, one might be a tiny little bit better than the other, but it's actually, yeah, it's like you got into the qualification to play at Wimbledon. You don't even need a wild card anymore. Yeah, you are there. You can compete. Now the question is your love mark. What differentiates you? What makes you different? And Kevin Roberts made that very clear, saying, you know, think about the five senses. Yeah, what makes you different in the five senses? And one of the exercises I give actually musicians, and I give it also to solo entrepreneurs, is to say, collect for each sense something which stands for you. Yeah. For me, for example, one of the things which stands for me is espresso. Yeah? I not only love espresso, I really, really love it, even if we're in the tea hour. Yeah? But it also stands for the things which I like to do, being short, precise, and very energetic.
And strong, yeah.
So that's something which, and that helps people to think about themselves, especially if you go out and want to be a coach, want to be a consultant, want to be a musician, to think about how to differentiate themselves, which is very authentic to themselves. Yeah? But it makes a difference out there. Yeah? It's different. Yeah? And that's one of the many concepts out there, and there's explanations of, I don't know, marketing and how to do sales, and you find some of that actually also on the Revibration app to do.
Yeah, Revibration app. Is that correct how I say it? Revibration.
Revibrations,
Okay.
yeah. It's a kind of artificial name, but it has to do with definitely music and saying, of echo, of resonance, of vibrations, yeah. Because I think good things actually happen in resonance. If you go in resonance, like in our conversation, we are in resonance with each other, yeah. And so that's how the name for Revibrations came up.
Yeah, I like that. And my last question is, as a keynote speaker, you're also a keynote speaker, you often focus on innovation and leadership, drawing on examples from the music world. Can you highlight a specific instance where a musical example effectively illustrated the leadership concept? How do these examples resonate with your audience and help them grasp complex leadership ideas?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the recent examples is a musician who came to me a couple of years ago, probably just 5 years ago. So, Veronika Witockova. She is an amazing flutist, really, really great flutist. What do flutists do? They go to an orchestra. So she started actually auditioning when she finished her studies, and he saw there were hundreds of flutists at each audition. And nobody actually could differentiate between these 100 great flutists. And she said she doesn't want to do that. So she started playing around and doing things, and somehow she moved completely into film music. So if you hear some of the Netflix series or BBC or, I don't know, National Geographic or so, and you hear a specific flute sound, that's
That's
probably Veronica. So
okay.
she started also speaking as playing ethnic flutes. And I'm sure I don't know the name of a Turkish ethnic flute, but she plays it for sure. Yeah? Every time I see her, every couple of months, I ask her, how many flutes do you play? It's probably 20 more, so she's around 80 at the moment,
Wow.
80 different flutes. She picks them up in kind of 2 weeks or so. She's a real serious star and fantastic in that.
Wow.
And she found her niche in playing music for films. So composers come to her, film composers, and say they need that, they want that. She records it at home. And now there is a classical musician coming from a very classical training, wanting to go the classical route of auditions and playing their lifelong in an orchestra. And she stood up and said, no, I don't do that. I try out other things. I play around with it, and I make that mark. And so she's actually a good example for me to do that. And I sometimes do my keynotes with musicians on the stage because it exemplifies so much of that energy they have, which we can learn so much from. And when we speak about innovation, innovation requires that extra energy, this extra thing, this joy of playing around with things, of trying things out and saying, that's not working, yeah, I'll throw it out, or I retry it, or I work on it to make it better, yeah. This amazing drive, and Veronica is one of them who really shows that fantastically.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I like how you said if you don't like the result, you can always change what you want to do. You can try new things and find out what you really, really, really like, and then continue with that when you find it finally, hopefully. Some of us find it very late, at the late ages, but doesn't matter. Keep
I
going, keep
mean,
searching.
I always say I love the concept of Ikigai, and I also developed an Ikigai course, which is on reverberations. Because Ikigai, when you put the four things together in that concept of saying, what are you really good at? What do you get paid for? What are you passionate about? What does your world need? When you think about that, it's actually rather complex to get really into that and to see where you are. And I often say to my clients whom I interview, who come to me for career advice or to career coaching, say, don't worry, it took me something like 25 years of my professional career to find what I'm really wanting to do and finding my ikigai. Yeah? So start working on it and develop the different areas and understand the different areas. Yeah? But it can take a long time, yes, and
Yes,
that's okay.
yes. Yes, thank you so much for your answers. Is there anything you would like to add for a last sentence for our audience?
I think one of the things I love so much about coaching is go out, get a different perspective, challenge someone, and be challenged. It opens up new perspectives and it makes you a different person.
Thank you. I also like your motto on your website. When you run out of answers, Bernard has the right question.
One
It's a
client
very good
said that
one.
to me, yeah. So,
Is it okay?
yes.
It is really nice. Thank you so much, Bernard. I would like everyone to subscribe our YouTube channel for more of this kind of tea talks with our new guests. I am so glad that you joined us today, Bernard. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you so much for having me and good luck. And I'm looking forward to also the next copy of the magazine again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.